Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. Past the September eclipse season, now we are in the opening thresholds of that new moon in Virgo, which sparked yesterday, the 21st, on the solar eclipse, new moon. And once again, I invite us all to contemplate what it is we want to bring in to this new world that seems very fraught, polarized, and finger-pointing, blame game. The new moon in Virgo is healing energy. That's what it's about. And as we begin this week, the 22nd, we are in the energy of the fall equinox, which happens when the sun enters the sign of Libra. So think about it. This equinox was sparked by that new moon solar eclipse yesterday. The other thing that's happening on this day is Mars enters the sign of Scorpio for several weeks. And arguably, Mars in the sign of Scorpio is one of its strongest sign energies. And that's because the Scorpio energy doggedly will work with whatever needs to happen to transform, shapeshift, make happen in order to achieve the goal. Change directions, whatever must be done. Mars is a very interesting planet, depending on the sign it's in. Of course, Aries is considered one of its natural signs. Scorpio is also considered one of its natural signs if you look at traditional ancient astrology before Pluto was discovered in 1930. So I always think of Mars and Scorpio as the ability to sort of resurrect, come out of the ashes, and keep going. It's that Mars and Scorpio energy that allows itself to change, shapeshift, become what it needs to become in order to stay on whatever the original goal was, even if it has to be modified. It's different than Mars expression in other signs, but if you are Mars in Scorpio, the next several weeks are basically a return for you, which happens every 2.5 years with the planet Mars. And that would be about re-engaging, restructuring, seeing what's left out of maybe what fell apart and what you want to reconstruct and move forward with. So I see this happening on the autumn equinox as being very symbolic of the regenerative quality of this particular autumn equinox. It is a time when we basically are measuring and looking at what is here, pros and cons, darkness and light, how we want to move forward, if we want to move forward. Think about the symbol of Libra, which is the scales. It's actually the only sign in the zodiacal wheel not represented by a person or a creature. And often we see the sign of Libra, it shows the justice icon, the woman holding the scales, but actually the symbol itself is simply the scales balance. And that's where we are. How do we even the playing field? How do we bring information to each side now that we are living in a world that is so parsed as to what we see and the information we get? How do we become more full so that we understand this? Now, the other piece of this is because of how this particular equinox is positioned, it does show the sort of floodgates of information. So I see it as being symbolic of we can be getting more than we can really disseminate. And so it's important to remember that stasis, the holding both things while measuring the value of each. And also the value of compromise, of coming to decisions where maybe there is no clear path. And it's important to hold in place and see and view this as we move forward over the next several months. The ending of this 9 year 2025, what are we sloughing off and what are we moving into with the energy of the 1 year, which is 2026? What will we be blazing forward with? So today is an important day, I think, with that moon in Libra as it moves in the sky with a sense of, let me find out more. Do I have the information I need? So this is a time just after that new moon solar eclipse when we want to measure carefully how we're going to proceed so that we're moving in a way that aligns with what it is we really intend to do. This is not a time of rash action, even though that may be happening for some on the planet. Virgo is more discerning. I mean, think about it. The sign of Virgo is basically all about measuring, taking time with something. And that's the new moon energy we're coming off of. The actual equinox occurs exactly at 2:19 p.m. Eastern time. So depending on where you are on the planet, you have hours of time to contemplate how you are moving through that editing, that discerning piece of the Virgo new moon. And as we move into the equinox energy, it may be asking us to get information, find out more. Maybe through the discernment, we discovered we don't have the information we need. And it may feel a little overwhelming, but it's important to open up to new possibilities, new ways of seeing, or at least be sure that decisions we're making are not just from a reactive place, but are from a place where we have taken time for thoughtful response and judgment. Tuesday, the 23rd, the moon goes void, of course, at 12:02 p.m. And the morning may be a bit confusing to some of us, or we don't feel like we know exactly where we're standing or what's happening. We may be having an appointment or something that we're doing, and someone isn't coming through, or we're not able to move in the way we thought we would. Once again, it's more important to get the information you need than to act hastily. That being said, some people will do what they feel they must do in the moment, but because we are in this place of waxing moon energy, And some of us may feel an immediacy or need to take action. It might be better to really see where you're at before that happens. Once the moon has gone void of course, that means it's not making another geometric aspect to another planetary position before it changes signs. And as I look at this, we may be, some of us, especially air signs, fire signs, may be engaged in things that feel inspirational, immediate, inspire us, or giving us a sense of exuberance. We must move this way. It's valuable to capture ideas, to jot them down, to engage in conversation. That moon is void of course basically all afternoon and evening until the next day, when on the 24th it enters the sign of Scorpio at 5 a.m. So we are in this period of time when whatever may seem very exciting and want to rally us to take off with isn't necessarily going to go as we think it is, or may go nowhere. Because when the moon is void of course, no matter how excited or jazzed a conversation may be, there's not really the glue to hold it together, to go forward and make things happen. So you want to be careful about what's ahead and where it may be going. Once the moon is safely in the sign of Scorpio, now we are in the real juicy, fecund energy to move forward with that new moon waxing cycle. So this is the day to start to engage. Some of us, especially in the morning, may encounter a push-pull power struggle. This can be within yourself, might be hard to get out of bed, might feel like, I don't have everything together that I wanted to have together, may feel as though you don't have the funds or the contacts to make something happen that you had in mind, or this could be an outer conversation. When you push beyond that, you can get to a place of greater resolution and understanding, which can provide clarity to how you're going to make this happen. So it's not bad to feel that sort of anxiety, which for some of us, we may be experiencing it even the day before. Anyone who has Mars-Pluto aspects in their horoscope in a challenging way may be feeling early this week this sense of like push-pull, power struggles, frustration. The antidote for this is channel that energy into something positive and physical. So that's exercise you're comfortable with, doing something that really helps you release chi, make love, all the things that allow you that sense of getting the energy out. Because once you do that, then you're in a better place to understand the balance of power with this, because it's like an engine, especially in people who have Mars or Pluto strong in their horoscope. It's an engine you can draw on to channel, but you want to make sure you're going in the right direction with it and using it effectively. So this is a highly charged and powerful day, and the absolute grace of it is after about 8 a.m. in the morning into the wee hours of the evening. It is just so rich with productivity, drive, creativity, ability to research, unearth secrets. Some of that may be in news cycle information. Once again, you want to make sure you disseminate information well, because for all the information we have in this information age, we don't necessarily have as the primary mandate wisdom or the ability to really understand what all that information means. And you also want to make sure that you have the discernment to understand that you are not being manipulated. That's a very scorpionic, plutonic layer that can be sort of oozing through this particular week. And we want to make sure that we use that capacity to delve deep into something, to really know what it is instead of being seduced by it. So Thursday, huge supercharged engine day. It is so important that early in the week that we know where we want to go this week, because boom, 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 boy, can we go there. Friday, the 26th, the moon is still in the sign of Scorpio in the early part of the day. It goes void of course at 1:44 p.m. and it enters the sign of Sagittarius at 5:37 p.m. So that gives us pretty much an afternoon Eastern time of a, well, late afternoon of a void of course moon on a Friday. So the best way to utilize this day is to get the real work done early in the day. Oh my gosh, we can just make things happen, move the earth literally. What is super important over the past few days is you want to have the right players in your sandbox. You want to make sure that anyone you're relying on or working with is really there for where you want to go, what you want to achieve, and how you're going to make it happen. These days, where was I? Pretty much, yeah. Wednesday, Thursday, and into Friday morning. These days are the days when you connect, reach to the people in power, the people who have the funds, the people who have the backing, the people who have your support. You work with these people to really lay groundwork for where you want to go. So whether it's in business or family matters, health matters, anything that you want to achieve, bring to fruition, especially if it's got to do with things that are pivotal for transforming, shifting, creating something structural or cohesive that is really going to catapult one into a new way of being. So, as you can hear, this can be if you're working with a medical team, if you're working in family dynamics, if you're making a commitment with a partner, either romantic or business. These are things that really help us reveal and strip down and understand all the mechanisms that are going to bring this thing to pass. And it's deep. So it's really important to go there wherever you need to go, Wednesday through Friday morning. Just deep dive, make it happen. And if the results aren't what you wanted, at least you know it's much more constructive than suffering from an illusion that is not going to come to pass. On Friday, the 26th, the moon goes void, of course, at 1:44 p.m. And then 5:37 p.m. is when it enters Sag. And so that afternoon, we can use for wrapping things up, kind of putting things in place, starting our weekend, if we're fortunate enough to be doing that, doing things that have to do with how we move into the next phase of what it is we want to make happen. Once the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius, this evening is one that can be full of, well, exuberance, excitement. We can feel very creatively charged. We can engage in conversations that really stimulate. We can also, depending on our horoscope, say the wrong thing or find ourselves in a situation that wasn't quite what we had thought it would be. Surprise. It's super important if you find yourself in a surprise situation, something you didn't expect, the conversation went away you hadn't anticipated, someone does something you hadn't anticipated. You want your eyes wide open this evening, especially in the early hours. You want to make sure you're alert to what might come up, what might be presented, who throws what at you. Because if you have that kind of ability to be on your feet, then you can pivot. And so the pivoting or the catching or the ability to snare, understand, put it in another direction is really important. For some of us, we may have found that, yes, what we thought was happening earlier in the week, something isn't going to come together. And this might become more something we're aware of on Saturday or Sunday. That awareness doesn't necessarily mean that what we initially had begun to do is not going to come to pass. What it does mean is we may have to make some structural changes. And this can be as simple as weekend plans that need to be adjusted based on, suddenly we don't have the reservation we thought, or there was a situation that now we have to change plans. So whatever that might be that changes the landscape for us is not necessarily a deal breaker. We just have to understand what we need to adjust about it in order to follow through with the original plan or modify the plan. So overall, this weekend can be one that is highly enjoyable, especially if we're out of doors. Out of doors is a wonderful way to receive the sense of exploration that the Sag moon likes. If it's pouring rain or in some way prohibitive for you to be out of doors, then what opens up new possibilities, new conversations, new ways of seeing for you? These are things very available on this particular weekend, as long as we are able to adjust, as I said earlier, to anything that may come up that just seems to curtail or modify what the original plan was.
You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.